now recording, and the Hangout is now live. And let me just let the chat room know.
Ooh.
What's up? Something wrong?
No, I'm just opening my notes for my main show notes.
Oh, yeah, well, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are you still getting into your notes?
Yeah. There we go.
All right.
No.
Do we want to do a countdown so we sync Jim and you and me?
Yeah.
Right.
Jim, you want to go countdown?
All right. Recording in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton.
And I am Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the 1984 film by David Lynch called Dune, about the book Dune.
Holla! No. Oh.
So, small introduction. This movie got passed around to a couple people, from what I understand. The rights were sold super cheap.
Yeah.
And then, it was with a couple people.
Yeah, so here are the people. Here's the people it was passed to before David Lynch got his hands on that, for better or worse. Mm-hmm. And there are people that like the Lynch film, as you're going to hear on our listener feedback show. And this show, we're just going to kind of be talking about our thoughts on it. But starting in 1971, the film kind of burned up millions of dollars as it passed through the hands of Planet of the Apes producer Arthur P. Jacobs. And then our Chilean director, Alejandro Jodorowsky, got it. And then sci-fi maven Ridley Scott also had a shot at it before it landed in the director of David Lynch. So it kind of went through a series of directors that got it, and well, I don't know much about the other two, but it sounded like Jodorowsky ended up being like a 10-hour film, and studios just really didn't want to tackle it with him. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's kind of the premise of how this film ended up in Lynch's hands.
Yeah.
It, by the way, was one of the most expensive films to make at its time. It cost them $42 million to make, which in 1984 was pretty incredible. And so this is one of the reasons that it did not really do well. So that I read it. I'm on a site called Film School Rejects, and they're just saying that why was there no Dune sequel? Its box office performance during the production, the budget ballooned to $42 million, which might not seem like a lot in the days, but was unheard of 30 million years ago. To put in perspective, in 1984 dollars, only 15 movies even made more than $42 million domestically, and only 5 of those, Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom, Gremlins, and The Karate Kid, made more than the 85 million or so needed just to break even at the box office. To put it in perspective a little bit more, Ghostbusters had a budget of $30 million. Indiana Jones, The Temple of the Doom, had a budget of just $28 million. So Dune blew the budget out, bigger than even these blockbusters were.
Yeah. Do we know how much it brought in?
I can find out in 1 second. So someone talk a little bit while I look on my favorite box office mojo.
Sure. So while we're here in the beginning of the show, I just want to quick remind everyone of our reading schedule. I know that things are kind of off because of the movies, so just a reminder. So then what we'll be doing for next episode is we're going to be reading Paul of Dune by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. And then after that, the next month, which will be August, we will be watching the Dune miniseries from Sci-Fi. After that, then we will go back into the rotation with Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and then the movie Children of Dune.
Yeah.
So just a reminder of how we'll be doing things in case you're wondering what's next and what's coming. We didn't want to take too much time away from reading the books. So
no, absolutely not. By the way, domestic, we don't have foreign, but domestic, it brought in $30 million. So it did not even hit its production budget. So
wow.
Not good for Dune and sequels. And not to mention that David Lynch kind of axed the chance of a sequel when he made it rain on Arrakis. But
yeah.
But one other thing we should mention before we get too far into the show is we do have an app that's kind of associated with the Dune Saga podcast. Now, this is new. Jim, you probably don't even know about this. David and I have kind of chatted about this over the past month.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so we have an app. It's in the Android stores, it's in the iTunes stores, and it's called the Zog Pod Collective if you want to download it. And we call it that because it's actually a collection of a bunch of podcasts that I'm associated with. The Sci-Fi Diner podcast, the Dune Saga podcast, the Podcast and Gear Show, and Haiti in Focus, which rarely ever comes out. But what you can do is you can download and you can hit every single past episode of the Dune Saga podcast. You can skip over the episodes of the other shows you don't want. Easy call in. You can just hit a button on your phone and it automatically calls in if you want to leave a listener feedback, if you want to tweet that you're listening to the show and help promote the show. You want to email us, jump onto our Facebook fan page. It's a great way to kind of interact with us here at the Dune Saga podcast.
Yeah.
And it's free right now. Right now it's free. So
it's pretty cool. I mean, you can, if you haven't listened to some of Scott's other shows, you can get a chance to get exposed to them as well. Good stuff there.
Yep.
For sure.
Just another way to encounter the show. Anyways, back to David Lynch's Dune.
Back to David Lynch's Dune. So I'm pretty sure most people listening are familiar with the overall story, but just real quick, you've got the prodigal son, Paul Atreides, who goes with his family to a new planet called Arrakis, new desert planet. He deals with a lot of things, including the assassination of his father. He's outcast to the desert, where him and his mother must learn to live with the Fremen, the people of the desert, where he becomes a messiah character for them and leads them to take the planet back.
Yes.
So that's
frees them from the chains of slavery.
That's right. That's the basic story of the movie and the book.
And storms of Arrakis, leading the people to the promised land, right?
Yeah.
In a metaphorical sense, actually not too far off.
No, not really. But Jim, why don't you give us your overall impressions of this film? And I think while we're doing this, I know that you saw it in theaters, so I'd love to hear your impression of the first time you saw it and also your impressions now.
And if I'm correct, Jim, is it true that you first read Dune because you watched the movie?
That is correct. I did.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
In the theater, this movie was just huge. It was big vistas, great characters, great actors. I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, and I continue to enjoy it now. It was just a spectacle. The only problems I had were some of the gross parts that involved Baron Harkonnen mostly.
Yeah. Did you tell me once that they gave you like a dictionary type handout when you saw the movie?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay, I thought somebody told me that they handed out like a sheet explaining some of the lingo for the film when they saw it.
Well, that was one of the things that this may be sidetracking the issue, but that was one of the things that people are saying, well, now, how could Star Wars, when it came out in '77, introduce a ton of new lingo? I mean, we had X-Wings, we had droids, we had TIE fighters, we had a ton of... but Dune, when Frank Herbert... When Lynch introduces Frank Herbert's lingo, it doesn't quite work because the lingo is too foreign to us. The other words we at least have some association with and sound like normal language.
Right.
But I can see someone walking into this movie being totally lost.
Yeah. My mother wanted to join us for the screening and that we had, and I said, well, I think the best thing to do is to watch the sci-fi miniseries. It explains it better. But even with that, I had to have a half-hour conversation where I sat down and discussed the universe with her so that she could understand the politics and everything to get the story. And she told me without that she would have been totally lost.
You saved her day.
I don't remember the exact figures, but I'll tell you what, this is one of the biggest bombs I ever ran at the theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, There were nights when there were 3 people in the audience.
Yeah. Which is really sad because I mean, Dune has such a following to it, and I mean, it got panned left and right by critics. Critics just actually tore it apart. Let me see. I did read some reviews from the time, and I don't have them right here right now, but it was just it got panned left and right.
Yes,
As
it
far
did.
critics did not like it, and it was just bad. Anyways, I can't find the review right now. But
I think just throwing in, Scott and I got the chance to see Jodorowsky's Dune, and we saw it with a nice audience screening. And in it, I think one of my favorite parts is where he starts talking about how he's nervous about seeing this film because it got taken from him and given to Lynch, and he's like, I thought, I would be crying and it would really hurt me that I went in and saw this, and his face looks like you can't quite read his expression. He looks excited. He's like, but as the moments go by, I just kept feeling this feeling, and I was just this smile on my face because this movie was horrible. So
that was a funny part of that documentary.
Yeah,
sure.
if I can find the clip and it's in English, I'll put it in the edit. But,
oh, please do.
So what were your impressions now, Jim, watching it again? I think you watched it last night, you said?
Yeah, I did. I've watched it a couple of times since we finished our last show. I still enjoy it. I can see a lot of the book in the movie. Not near as much as probably there should be, which most likely turned people off to it. Real hardcore Dune fans would probably not enjoy this movie seeing it for the first time. But yeah, I still like it. I'm not sorry that I own it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Darker 45 in the chat room says this film has major faults, but still colors my Dune universe more so than that of the miniseries ever has. So I mean, that seems positive. You're interpreting that as being a positive thing. How about for you, David? How did this rewatching this first impressions, watching it again?
Okay, so watching it again, it had been a long time, and I remember not enjoying it much the last time I had seen it. And at that point, I was not a Dune fan. So it was just me watching TV and seeing it on TV. So we sat down, and at the beginning of the movie, I was like, wow, maybe I was wrong, and I just didn't have my attention. The beginning was very solid. I mean, granted, I felt like they were putting too much information into this movie, but I was still like, okay, like this is working for me. Like, it's not really bad at this point. But then, at some point, it just kind of takes one step to the side of the path that it was going down and seems like slightly off. And then as the film goes, they just keep taking a little bit step further and a little bit step further until eventually you're just like, this is like, what's happening anymore? That's kind of the sense that I got from it. Very 80s. Very, very 80s. I have to say, special effects, other than the ships, were good. Like, I mean, I watch it, and like for the time, that probably was awesome.
Yeah. The shields were a bit.
Well, the shields, but but like the practical effects,
right,
were really cool. The designs were interesting. Man, they made the Harkonnens disgusting as anything.
Yes. Way worse than the books.
Yeah.
Like you really were disgusted. I mean, you hated the Harkonnens in the book, but these people were absolutely and so freaky. What were we talking about in the one? I think after the movie we were talking about. It's so disturbing to think that here is, Baron the Baron just laughing maniacally around the shower as Fade Routh is showering in the steam shower. It's just absolutely disturbing. To that.
But then he steps out and just stares at the camera.
Yeah.
All's forgiven.
Oh yeah.
Most of the Harkonnen stuff was disgusting.
I'm going to tell you what, though, if Jodorowsky would have put out his film, it'd have been even worse.
Yes.
Because when they interrogate Leto, they dismember him in his version. So it's absolutely.
Oh wow.
Then yeah, but
Yeah. Uh, what was the major part of this movie now, looking back, Jim, that you feel like it kind of departs for you from what you know of the universe?
Well, the story isn't there. It's extremely abbreviated. The movie's almost like an outline of what the movie is supposed to be. Now, I realize that a book that is as complicated as Dune is, you couldn't make the whole thing into a movie. However, I took time to watch the extra features on the DVD. And do you realize there was another hour and 45 minutes planned for this movie?
What? Wow.
Yes. And the scenes that were cut out, the fight with Jamis was taken out. There was a lot of stuff that was removed from the movie to bring the time down to 2 hours and 16 minutes as it is. But yeah, there was another hour and 45 minutes of footage shot that looked like the book.
Wow.
It was supposed to be a 4-hour movie.
Yeah.
You know, I can see that because there are whole plots that they build up for no reason, such as Thufir.
Yeah.
Like they build up the fact that they captured him and they give him those heart plugs, which is just like a crazy idea.
Right.
And then they have him drinking his antidote from a cat with a rat on the back
And he needs
of it.
to milk the
He has
cat.
to milk the cat to get the antidote.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you what, go to Walmart, look in the $5 bin. That's where I picked up the Blu-ray for Dune, the copy that I have. And the extra features are really interesting and really good.
So it's worth it just to get that DVD for the extra features.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah.
Cool. Anything else for you, Scott, that you thought that stood out for your overall? What was your overall impression? We didn't hear yours.
Well, I watched this movie for the first time 4 months ago because remember you were like, "Oh, you ruined it." And then I watched it again on the big screen, which I was kind of excited about. You know, you don't often get to see these movies done in the big screen anymore. So the fact that we have this as a big screen watching was great. There were certainly things in this movie that were dated. You had the great 1980s soundtrack to it. We're going to be playing a clip of that in our listener feedback show. And there's some stuff in here that is dated. There's some stuff that I liked, but I think someone said well when we had our conversation after that they spent a lot of time on kind of the preamble, setting everything up, and then because Dune's divided into 3 books. They spend a lot of time in that first book, and then when you get to book 2 and 3, it's kind of just glossed over, and it seems like Jim, you said they trimmed this movie down from a 4-hour movie down to the 2.5-hour movie that we got. There's a sense where it seems like the stuff that they trimmed was the stuff that was in book 2 and 3, and I think as a result, book 2 and 3, or that part of the movie that was covering that, just felt empty and too many unanswered questions that if you went into this movie having never read Dune, you walked out thinking, man, what drug trip was I on?
Well, more of that introduction, we get that in the book. More of that introduction is, if I recall correctly, Irulan's monologue would have gone on for almost 20 minutes if they had made that movie as it was shot.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that at all. I mean, I liked the intro with her. I thought the filming was cool, the way that they had her standing there. Like, I was interested in the beginning.
I liked. I mean, that's the only real place we see her, right?
Yeah.
Do we see her at the end? Is she there with Saddam at the end?
She is.
Okay, so but no real interaction there. No marriage mentioned the Duke right at that point. Mm-hmm. So she's kind of an accessory, and her role, like why she's even speaking, for Paul, we don't really get that.
Right.
There's no connection to it, so her role is extremely underplayed. But the actor that plays it and delivers those lines really does work.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about characters, should we talk about?
Yeah, let's go talk about characters, things that we like, things that we didn't like here. Do you want to start us off, David?
Sure.
Pick a character.
Well, I'm going to start off with the. I'm going to start with the navigators.
Okay. You mean the big walruses in the tanks?
Yeah. What a weird.
Oh, sorry.
What a weird way. Not at all what I imagined the navigators to look like. In my mind, the navigators are kind of more like they are in the sci-fi series, but with bigger heads. But it just, I don't know, the mouth is they're just really disgusting to look at overall. I liked the way that the guild members though were portrayed, how they had a translator they had to speak through, almost like their brains had, how they say their brains develop past communication, and it had to speak into that box in order for the emperor to understand what they were saying. I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, the thing that they wrote it in, the tank was cool, but the navigator itself, and then when they showed it like navigating, what was going on? It's like barfing up light.
Yeah, that was a bit odd.
I thought they were blowing it out of their nose.
Yeah, nose or mouth or something on their face.
Yeah,
opens up and just like this light just.
Yeah, this whole idea is of prescience. It's just kind of it's just the way they portrayed it was very psychedelic.
Yeah, the spice is very underplayed in this movie. Yeah,
I mean you see it, but you hear it mentioned, but the role it has in the in the what do you call it, in the Emperor's realm is very minimized. You don't really know how important it is to the entire society. So why is the Emperor so interested in on this world?
Yeah.
That's that connection, the fact that people have grown dependent on it is totally underplayed.
It's all about Leto's army in this movie, and less about the spice.
Yeah. I like when we were talking about Irulan at the beginning, the TV version of the movie had much more voiceovers to explain the audience. This is from Darker 45. What was going on? A movie is struggling when you need a voice to explain what the hell is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's my take on the navigators. Somebody else want to take another character?
Yeah, I'll take the next one. So let me take Feyd-Rautha. So Sting as Feyd-Rautha, right? That did not bother me as much. I mean, he comes off a bit more creepy than when I read Feyd-Rautha in the book. I didn't see him quite that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But his betrayal, his physique, and the way he comes out, and he is what's creepy about him has more to do with his uncle than it has to do with Feyd-Rautha himself. For me, I think the Beast I'm taking two here, but I think the Beast is extremely underplayed.
Yeah, but at the same time, I felt it captured the essence of the character.
You mean when he walks by that cow and yanks a piece off the cow and starts chewing on it?
Yeah. Well, he just looks like a lazy meathead.
Yeah, crushing the little bug in the little square tube to get his drink and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the sewer running right through the house. They just throw stuff in the sewer. And,
that's right.
Yeah. In fact, this is going back to what is House Carino or whatever. What was the last book of the trilogy before is it House Carino?
Yeah.
So that part when the Baron's standing over the sewers and they throw that one guy into the sewer and he drowns in it. That just kind of what you just said, Jim, just reminded me of that scene. Jim, how about you? A character that kind of stuck out to you that you didn't like, that you felt was too different from the book?
Oh, my favorite character, hands down, and I think it's as much because of the actor as it is the character, is Duke Leto himself. I mean, it was spot on in this movie. I can't even pronounce the man's name properly. Is it Jurgen Prochnov? Is that how it's pronounced?
You're doing a much better job than I am.
Well, see, that's because I took 4 years of German 1 in high school. But at any rate, I thought that I thought that that was an absolute brilliant portrayal, and I'll tell you what, I would love to have seen more of him in that movie. Uh, you could see the compassion that he had. He imparted that, but he wasn't going to take any guff off of anybody. When he died in that film, I was very sad. I wanted more.
Yeah. That entire, especially if you go from watching this to the miniseries, there's a lot more time. They take a lot more time to develop the series than they do in this movie. You get a lot more of the Duke.
Yeah.
We'll get to the miniseries. Just a little comparison there.
I did like the Duke, though. I kind of like Jessica.
Yeah. You like Jessica too?
Yeah. I mean, I thought that I don't think she matches the book, but just like the character in the movie itself, I felt that she played.
What do you think of the bald Bene Gesserits?
I think it's weird.
Because they aren't bald in the books.
No.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Were they
let's address.
completely
well,
were
first
they completely bald, or did they have a headdress on? I can't remember.
I just thought in that it does create them as being kind of sinister.
Yes.
To have them there without any hair.
Yeah.
But except for Jessica, but we of course know that she's not a true Bene Gesserit.
Mm-hmm.
But she is bald later on.
I did like the way they did the glow globes.
See, I didn't.
In this, you didn't.
I didn't like the glow globes. They weren't what I imagined. Like when I imagined glow globes, I didn't imagine like things with angel wings on them, kind of decorative, ornate.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things in the miniseries matched the description better, but this was still cool to see.
Yeah, it was definitely cool to see the. It was definitely cool to see the glow globes.
Yeah.
And the Hunter Seekers, was that the thing that came into Paul's room?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's cool to see that.
Yeah.
I don't know how different they are in the miniseries, but they seem like I would imagine them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the effects the way they were.
Yeah, that was a neat scene.
How about the change in the weirding way?
Oh, are we getting off of characters now?
Well,
no, that's fine. No, you mean the fact that they use machines to do it?
Yeah, and it was just like a vocal thing,
right?
Instead of a fighting style.
I don't know, Jim. What do you think?
I watched the movie first. I read the book, and I wondered where these weirding modules were when I read the book. To this day, I wonder where they came from and why.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was for the battle scenes more than anything else. Because as you know from reading the book, the battle scenes are much abbreviated in the book, but they play it out. They flesh it out more in the movie. And so I guess they had to have some kind of weapon.
I mean, I guess that's the other thing that I'm thinking, that if the weirding way was a fighting style, right?
Yeah.
We're coming off of Star Wars with blasters and lasers and other things. It could be that they put that in there saying, well, we aren't going to be able to have something that looks kind of martial artish. We want something that has some cool effects that they can actually be shooting at things and trying to make it work. But
yeah.
But
it was a prop. It was a prop that wasn't in the book that apparently got made up to use for the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of Paul? Thoughts on Paul?
Hey, they definitely play him young.
Right.
That's what I got. I mean, he feels young in this movie.
I think he feels, even though he's young in the books, I think he feels older in the books.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
He seemed younger than I expected. Jim?
I have heard from numerous people that Kyle MacLachlan was the only weak spot in that movie, and I don't see that. I thought he did. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, I thought
I don't know. I can't think of another actor that I would want to see in the role. As far as playing him young is concerned, I think he was young, but he was older. He looked more 20-ish in the movie, but wasn't he like 15, 17?
I don't know. I think he was in the book. He was 17 at the end.
I don't know how old the actor was.
I don't know how old the actor was. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm not sure either, but I know that Kyle MacLachlan was older than 17 years old when he did that part.
Yeah.
At times, I thought he was a little bit stiff, but then again, he is becoming the Duke.
Yeah.
Right.
And the leader of the Fremen, as well as the Lisan El Gaib. But yeah, I didn't have a problem with him at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked his sister. I thought the sister Paul's sister did a great job.
She's creepy.
She is, and that's why she did a great job.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite characters, even though it's such a small role. One of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
She creeped me out on two occasions when she had that Gom Jabbar on her finger and she was waving it in the air after she used it, and then that weird scene with her dancing, holding the crysknife. I wondered what that was about.
Dude, that scene in front of the Emperor is absolutely great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I really did like her part. So
you know what I want? I want a poster of Gurney Halleck holding the pug, yelling "charge" or whatever he's yelling. I just thought that was so great. He's being all like, a BA, and he's just got this pug in his hand while he's commanding the armies. And
That's right.
I thought that was hilarious.
Oh yeah. Well, it's Patrick Stewart. You cannot argue with Patrick Stewart.
I was gonna say Picard can do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're darn right.
Yeah.
You know something? Emperor Shaddam, Jose Ferrer, what an actor. What an awesome actor. And even though he didn't play a huge part in the movie, he had a real presence.
Mm-hmm.
He did. And the scenes we do see him, and he carries that role beautifully. It's very much in line with Frank Herbert's Dune books. It's not in line as you jump into the Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert books. The way I picture the Emperor there is just not the way I view it in Frank Herbert's books. But that's a difference in writing style, and we get that again as we head back into Paul of Dune.
Yeah.
So any other actors or characters that we're missing before we move on and talk about some other things?
I think we'd be doing a foul if we didn't talk about the Baron.
Oh yeah. Do we have to? I mean, come on.
He's so gross. He just seems to yell all of his lines.
Yeah.
That's what bothered me about him, acting wise. But I don't think it's the actor's fault. I think it's directorial issue there. But the fat suit and everything was so gross.
It was.
So
the suspensor field was that was kind of cool actually.
Yeah.
It was
cool.
Yeah.
His painted toenails.
When the doctor's like working on his cheek and he's like, "I love you, my Baron. Work on you his life," or whatever he says.
Diseases love to me.
Yeah.
Taken care of for all time. It's like yuck. Oh. What kind of doctor is this?
I did like Brad Dourif as the Mentat, his Mentat, Piter de Vries, right?
Mm-hmm.
I loved his. He does a good job. I've liked him in most of his stuff, even as Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings. He just does a great job as these creepy characters. It's kind of the same character, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah,
he just reprised his role.
Yeah, he's always a psycho, no matter where he is.
Oh, I love that psycho.
Minus those eyebrows.
Yeah, oh my word. Minus the eyebrows.
Such style.
I know. You know it. You know it.
Well, let's take a move on here and talk about why do we think the film turned out this way? This style of film, like why did it turn out so different from the book?
Let me channel David Lynch for a moment.
Well, first of all, they cut an hour and 3/4 out of the movie.
Definitely.
Right.
So that would be one thing. Another, I think the music. I think Toto's score was a big factor in that. When I read about the Emperor and those, it makes me think of classical music. And we definitely had a score that was rock. And I think, not that the score wasn't outstanding, it was incredible. It fit the movie well. But I think that may have been, and whether people realize it or not, a big turnoff for Dune fans.
Darker45 just said in the chat that he doesn't think it's a 3-hour story. I don't think that Lynch's version could have been watchable at 3 hours.
When you think of Jodorowsky aiming for 10 hours, it seems a little bit more authentic with the depth and richness of Frank Herbert's world. But he's going to sit through a 10-hour movie. But as he said, Darker says it should have been maybe a movie in 3 parts. What we really need is Peter Jackson to get hold of this movie and add supplementary material and really flesh it out.
Yeah,
I would agree with that only if they made the movies the way they did the Back to the Future movies. Made all the movies at the same time and released them within a reasonable amount of time, say 6 months.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because we've seen Jodorowsky's Dune, I feel like almost like a little insight into this background. There's a lot of this that feels like his stuff, and I wonder if that book that he made, spelling it out, and gave to the production.
Jodorowsky.
Gave to the production stuff. I wonder if they took that to Lynch and said, here was kind of an idea that somebody had, like, do your version of it, or maybe incorporate these things into it. Especially the godlike power that Paul gets at the end of the film with calling down the rain and kind of the supreme being status that he has. In Jodorowsky's Dune, the idea was that he would get killed and become this omnipotent being, and his voice would come from everyone, and he would talk at the Emperor out of everyone around him and saying how, I am Paul Atreides.
I'm reading an article, I have it in front of me, and this is an article, just for reference, from Film School Rejects, and the title of it is David Lynch Subverted a Franchise to Ensure a Sequel to Dune Was Impossible. So David Lynch was known for subversive films even prior to handling Dune, and he just writes. I want to read just 2 sections of it because I think it plays into our conversation here. He says, Lynch was a bold choice for the film, considering he was handed a massive potential franchise when he was known for more intimate and often obscure and surreal personal films. Ultimately, Lynch made a film that ensured a sequel was impossible, and that was a brilliant, though almost career-ending move. And he goes on later on, he goes, love it or hate it, Dune is David Lynch's masterpiece because it didn't just mess with the audience, it messed with the entire studio system and their newfound love for sequels in the 80s. Part of me believes that Lynch torpedoed any hope of a sequel on purpose, just to mess with the system. So that's just another thought on it, that you won't make a sequel out of this. We have rain on Arrakis.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting thought.
Now, as I think back in reading the books, I thought they had combined a little bit 2 books.
Well, they do that in the in the sequel to the sci-fi miniseries, right? And Children of Dune, that's a combination of 2 books.
Yeah.
But we don't get that in the. I don't think that David Lynch's book was meant to. His movie was meant to be a conglomeration of all the books.
Yeah, I think it's.
Well,
Seems fair.
did it not rain on Arrakis in Dune Messiah?
No.
It
No.
didn't.
There's not rain on Arrakis until God Emperor.
No, 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 no! I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm just kidding. You ruined it.
I know.
Thanks a lot, David.
Guess we should just stop here.
I'm walking out. I'm
Spoiler
done with this
alert.
podcast. No. All right. All right. Well, I mean, they're definitely leading that direction in the books, but we don't see it.
Right.
So.
Well, I think that's mostly because they constantly are spelling out that this is like a multi-generational type thing.
I really love that scene, though, when it started raining and the reaction of the Fremen. They played that well.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
They did.
You know,
I love when the Baron gets eaten by the sandworm. I know it's not in the book, but
And just a funny aside note: the other night, Chrissy and I were out riding our bikes, and we stopped at a park, and I was watching someone wash their car, and I thought, I wonder what a Fremen would think of this, the way we waste water.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
It's funny what these books and this podcast does to your brain, because there are so many times where I think you got to think about your water. Like, don't waste your breath, or you're not, don't go outside without your still suit kind of thought. Or you saw someone wash for just random things. I'm like, man, why am I thinking like that? Like, it's a book.
Yeah.
It's not just a book, David.
And I read somewhere that Frank Herbert's intention was to address conservation as one of the reasons for writing the books.
Yeah. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've read that too, and it makes sense then, this whole use of water and respecting the natural world around you, like the Fremen do. They respect the desert, respect the sandworms.
Mm-hmm.
It's essential, and you see that in the Glorious Misuse. The villains, totally in the books especially, really handle water badly.
Yeah.
So you do see that kind.
Yeah.
But so as we look at the book and we look at the movie, and do you think that the film at least hits the intent of Frank Herbert? If it's not as good as the book, which it kind of is a sense I'm getting here, even though that it has its place, does it capture the heart of Frank Herbert? I've done it. I've stumped David. Jim, how about you?
I would say that it does to a point.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. It is Paul's story, how Paul rose to power and became what he eventually did become. But there is so much missing there. Don't you think, David? Is that what's got you kind of stumped a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I mean, this is kind of how, going back to what I said before. I think at the beginning it really kind of hits the same. Like, that's because they don't leave anything out in the first book. It's all there. It's almost too much there, and for that, it really hits what the tones of the book were for me. Like, some of the themes there, but then it just, little by little, it just becomes more and more off sync, and anymore. Theme-wise.
You see, like one of the things that Frank Herbert's obviously addressing in the book is this whole idea of religion empowered. Do you see that theme kind of playing out in the movie?
Well, you see religion.
The blind faith of the Fremen just following Paul seems a little bit, seems a little bit that way.
But you don't get, I don't think you get the same aspect of how it's a tool, and how Jessica and Paul both acknowledge that it's a tool that they're using.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't see how it's a bad thing.
The monster hype.
Oh, sorry about that.
Hey now.
Yeah. Edit that out of the show.
Yeah, I don't think that you see that negative side to the power of religion, like you get in the book about them seeing how it's, they're using it as a tool, and they know they're using it as a tool.
Right.
So. Yeah.
And then I guess the ecology, which we did kind of talk about, they do hint at that here, and the idea of water, but we don't get a huge. It's not a. I wouldn't say this is a huge ecological film.
No, I don't. Ecology. I don't think drug use is definitely not an issue in it.
Yeah.
Even though some of the political stuff isn't, like the financial struggle, the political kind of stuff is not really a theme in here. It's basic. It's when you break it down, it's this guy has an army that could defeat my army. So
my army's bigger than your army.
Yeah.
So that, Emperor Saddam.
Yeah. So we're going to stop him before he has a chance to use his better army on our army.
We got sandworms. What do you got, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
what did you think?
Speaking of sandworms, I want to throw this in as an aside. The Theater Trade magazine gave Dune an award. Dune won an award for imitation of a sandworm by a tennis shoe for Dune.
Imitation of a sandworm by a tennis shoe.
Yeah, it was a joke page. From Box Office Magazine. I just flashed on that, remembered that. So, go on. I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say the sandworms. They were okay.
Yeah, they were fine.
They were fine.
Except for the electricity, I didn't quite get.
No, you know what? Instead of putting fire in their mauls, which is what they should have had, they had these internal combustion engines kind of firing them, not literal engines, but these fires within them that should be fueling them. We don't get that, so we get electricity coming out of the sky kind of revolving around them, which I guess plays into the sandstorms a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. If you're going to have something moving across sand like that, it is going to create static electricity.
That is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're made of felt. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I see it. It's big, so it's gonna, it's not like a sand or like a snake going across.
Right.
It's big.
I was disappointed at the end when they come into the city that you don't see these sandworms gulping up hordes of people. But I guess this is 1984. It's not a different sentiment.
You got to see Meet the Baron instead.
Yes, I know, and that was just as.
I did take
satisfying.
a look at some of the toys for this. Did you, by any chance, see?
I did not.
Stuff? It's 80s toys. They made like some of the Spice Collectors vehicles, and so the guys, they were pretty decent. I want a worm. They made worms.
Yeah.
I want a sandworm. I
just go to a foreign country for that, buddy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. If you want worms, no,
yeah,
you can do that here too. You don't need to go to a foreign country.
Don't need to go to a foreign. But no, the toy's pretty cool. It's just it's articulated. It's just it would look cool on my Dune shelf. Is all I'm saying.
Right. So if you were to be stranded on a desert island, Jim, it can only have Dune the book or Dune the David Lynch film. Which would you choose?
Oh, the book, hands down.
Okay. How about for you, David?
Book.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. The book was just much richer of an experience. And I feel like I could go back and reread that book and capture stuff I missed the first time going through it. and I don't feel like I would do that with
Right.
David Lynch.
Right.
So
I know a lot of people love this film, and I just want to say that even though I don't have a positive view of it, I definitely respect your view of it, and I understand.
And when there are some
Yeah.
positive aspects, I think we pulled out of it. I mean, the casting. Darker 45 said the casting of it was pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't say that I love the movie, but I appreciate it for opening the door to me
Right.
to the universe of Dune, and I do like the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Darker's leaving the chat room. So thank you for joining us here in the chat room and in the conversations here. By the way, before we get into our closing thoughts on this, we did record after watching the movie live about a 20 to 30 minute conversation about the movie, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be airing that. What is a separate episode?
Yeah. So this is going to be a Dune Saga podcast filled month for you guys.
It will be.
So we did 2 screenings. We did one for David Lynch's Dune. We did one for Jodorowsky's Dune. And we recorded conversations after each one with those who decided to stay in the audience with us. A big thank you to Penn Cinema for showing David Lynch's Dune, having a screening just for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was great to see, our local fans there as well. Some people who hadn't heard of us just came because they liked David Lynch's movie.
Right. And by the way, Jim, there were more people in that theater than in the theater that you were showing it. We had at least 20, 25 people.
Yeah, 20, 25
That's
people.
probably more than it was there all week.
And they were excited about it too. I talked to some of them ahead of time. And then we also, we also recorded that for Jodorowsky's Dune. There was probably about 30 people there.
There were more people there, actually.
There was more people at that one. But, that's a currently playing thing.
Right.
Documentary appeals. So.
And we do got to thank Zootropolis for airing that in our area. So.
Yeah, big thanks. And for letting us come out and set up and record after they
staying late.
Yeah.
To kind of let us do that.
Right.
So, very cool.
Big thanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep our normal schedule of this airing, and then in 2 weeks after this airs, you'll have the listener feedback. But in between, we'll have
so many episodes.
We'll have the episode for Dune one of the weeks, and then the week after the listener feedback, you will also get the Jodorowskys.
Yeah, absolutely. So in our closing thoughts on Dune, let's talk about this. How would you rate this movie if you had to rate it? David, let's start with you.
How are we rating it, as a film or as a Dune fan or what?
Okay, well, why don't we do it as both?
Okay. As a film in general, I would give it probably like a 2.5
out
of 5.
Okay.
My reasoning for that is I'm bored watching this movie. Like even the times before I was in Dune and I watched it, I watched it and I said, what I would think to myself is, I should like this. Like, I'm waiting to like this.
Right.
And it just never happened. Like, this is all the elements, but it's just missing something. As a Dune fan, I'm going to rate it as if there was nothing else, and I'm going to say a 3 out of 5. Because if there was no other Dune movie, and you had the opportunity to watch this movie, seeing the characters on screen,
there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for that.
Yeah. Jim, how about you?
Okay, well, let's see. As a movie, I would say for me it was a 3.5, and as a Dune, part of the Dune universe, I'd give it a 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, where do I fit it? It's 2 as a movie. There are parts that I like, but there's parts that just doesn't hold up for me. If you look at a movie like Dune needs to hold its own. You need to be able to appeal to a mass audience and give enough background, and it falls woefully short in giving enough context for the average audience. It's one of its probably its biggest failing for me. I can't give this more than a 2 out of 5. As a Dune fan and seeing Dune come to life on the screen, I'm going to give it a 3 only because we do get to see the world that we have read come to life on the screen, and there are some parts that seem, I don't know, the palaces, the sandworms, the Fremen, and seeing that are pretty good. We didn't talk about Stilgar, but I like Stilgar as a character,
Yeah.
although the tension between him and Paul is way underplayed. There's no tension at all.
Yeah.
But I do like it. It's just it can't be higher than that for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but that's about it. Do we have anything else anything else we need to say about this, Jim?
Well, I was just thinking that you mentioned the sets. I thought they were a lot more ornate than I imagined them in the book.
Yeah. Which I think you do hit on something there. I mean, they're on Arrakis, right? This is a pretty desolate and pretty harsh world. Are you going to be seeing these ornate and elaborate palaces? Well, maybe. I mean, the Baron's there, and we did have, didn't we have Fenric developing this huge arboretum for his wife and doing some of that stuff? So some of that stuff is there.
Yeah.
So maybe it was ornate, but it didn't feel, for me, it didn't feel out of place from what I know. But
yeah, and the Duke's castle on Caladan seemed awful dark.
Yeah.
I would have expected the lights to be brighter and the mood to be better on Caladan.
Do you think the storm that's raging around Leto is meant by Lynch to be symbolic of the political storm that's raging around him as he goes to Arrakis?
Oh, I wouldn't.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
I mean, wouldn't doubt it. And we didn't mention this, but like the book, from the get-go that they're working to assassinate Leto. They're upfront about that, the same as the other book.
Yeah.
The same as in the book. So.
Yeah.
But what? Go ahead.
Well, normally around this time we would talk about what we're looking forward to in the next book, and the next book we're going to be reading is Paul of Dune. But I think rather than talk about that now, let's talk about what we're looking forward to see in the miniseries, since we're talking about films.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things? You've seen it, right, Scott?
I have. I've seen it. I watched both of those before I watched Lynch's.
Okay, and have you seen it, Jim?
I have, but I barely remember it.
Forward to seeing done differently than what you saw in Dune Lynch? Just one thing that you would like to see.
Do I just have to pick one?
Just pick.
Okay, I got to give 3.
Okay.
Can I have 3?
Yeah.
Actor that plays Paul. I love the actor that plays Paul in the miniseries. He's just great. I love Duke Leto. I love John Hurt. John Hurt does a great job as Luke. In my opinion, does a great job as Duke Leto in that. So those 2 things, and I like the Navigators way much better in this book. So in that miniseries. So those 3 things I'm looking at seeing and embracing.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jim?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm hoping that the story is I'm hoping that the story is a little more complete and fleshes things out a little better. But I think mostly what I'm looking forward to is my son has it on DVD and he's going to bring it over and we're going to watch it together. I'm very much looking forward to
that. That'll be awesome.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah.
Talked about more and addressed more. I like the sandworms better.
Yeah.
Also, Leto, I just love the guy who plays John Hurt.
There's that one scene when they rescue the people from the spice miner in that movie. It's just absolutely done way better than it is done in David Lynch's film. I just love it. It's great. So I'm totally. I can't wait till we get to this movie in, I guess, August. So. Yeah.
So, just a reminder, if you want to give us comments on Paul of Dune, or if you're anxious, since we're talking about film, to talk about the miniseries, There are several ways that you can get in touch with us, and we will respond to you in our listener feedback shows coming up. You can do so by emailing us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact us through our Facebook page, facebook.com/dunesagapodcast, Twitter @dunesagapodcast, as well as leave a comment on the website if you want. You can also call our voicemail, and that's the voicemail number, Scott,
is 1-260-577-CHAT, or 1-260-577-2428. And by the way, you can find all this stuff. You can do all that stuff by downloading the app from the App Store, whether it's the Android, the Google, or the Amazon, or the iTunes App Store, and that's ZogPod, ZOGPOD Collective. And all those links. Now, I think that the link to the website will probably, and Facebook will take you to the ZogPod Collective Facebook page, which isn't really active right now, but all the other links will take you to places that you can find us. Mm-hmm. So it's very good with that.
Great. Jim, why don't you take us out?
All right. Once again, for the Dune Saga podcast, I'm Jim Arrowwood.
And I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Scott Herzog.
And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
We dubbed it. Who's going to say it?
Do it again, David. Do it again.
Go ahead, Jim.
All right, I'll do it.
All right.
And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
I think we need to take turns with that.
Yeah, we do.
We probably need a designate ahead of time.
Yeah, because we all sit here just like waiting for someone to say it.
Yeah.
All right, just give me a second here. Booting in. All right, we're good.
Okay.
Do we need a short break? Do we need a short break here? Or we want to jump right into listener feedback.
I think I need a break.
All right, very good. Awesome.
All right.
For those in the chat room. So, cue the music.
Yeah.
So, cue the.
I don't know if there's anyone in the chat room.
No, there's not. But
there were.
Just in case, right?
Yeah.
I'll cue some music up here. Yeah.
There could be people on YouTube watching too.
Yeah, that's true too.
I saw somebody subscribe to us.
Okay.
Do you want to refill coffee or anything?
I think I'll get some water. That went hard.
What?
to talk about.
You know, and it was like we got 45 minutes. We probably could have ended it.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked for it was an hour, so that was fine.
Yeah.
But
I don't think they got boring anymore.
no, I don't. But it was hard. I just didn't.
I think it's because I'm just not that into the movie. You know what I mean? It's not like the books were like I love them.
Yeah.
No.
No, absolutely.
But we've got a lot of listener feedback.
Yeah, we do.
I think that should be a walk in the park.
Let's see here. Can you make QuickTime just play it over and over again? Oh yeah, there we are.
It's on YouTube. You just change the address in YouTube. Instead of youtube.com, you just change it to listenonrepeat.com.
Okay.
And it just plays this.
Okay. We'll just allow that to haunt people that are coming in.
Test, test, 1, 2.
You shut the door after you. All right. Hey, Jim.
Hello, I'm back.
Can you identify this music?
That's that organ piece from Monty Python.
Yeah, it is the intermission. That's the way I know it. I don't know if this actually has another name to it or if it's another just music they're using. But,
I'm sure it does.
yeah, but that's what I know. It. Music from Monty
I
Python.
think somebody's at the door.
Hello, T-Ty?
Oh, can we use the laptop?
Yeah, well, they're down there watching TV, so I guess. Yep.
Okay.
All right,
Just so-
all right. We are back.
Just so
Go ahead.
things don't seem like they're going lame on you, every now and then the audio is dropping out. So sometimes if you cue me, I may not know it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did notice that one or two times. It didn't bother me because I think somehow you picked up that we were waiting for you to speak, and I think you just spoke. But,
Oh, okay.
so, all right. Did you get the? Yeah, you're in. So you're in the listener feedback.
Yep,
All right.
I've got it.
That always. Oops.
Yep. All right. Are we ready to record this show?
I'm down.
Let's do it. We have a lot of feedback to get through.
Are you you want to open up and then just talk about the app right away?
Yeah, I can open up. You want me to open up? I'll open up the show. And sounds good. And the Ben from Birmingham, that's the audio feedback. We got some audio
Okay.
feedback here. So
Yeah.
let me actually cue that up and wait. Very good. All right. Are you guys ready to go?
Yeah, I am.
Jim, do you want to count again to start this?
Sure will. Recording in 3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome, Dune Saga Podcast. This is our listener feedback show for Dune, the David Lynch film. And boy, do we have tons of listener feedback tonight. Jim?
Hello. The audio dropped out. You need to just
Okay,
give
let
an
me
intro.
try that. Yeah, let me try. Let me try again. I'm Scott Herzog.
I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood.
Guys had a lot of things to say. You guys and gals, I should say, had a lot of things to say about this movie. And man, they were dropping in all sides of this movie, right? Some liked it, some didn't. There were parts liked. Isn't that kind of your take on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lots and lots of people had something to say about this.
Yep. If you are tuning in and you have not contributed and you want to contribute to this listener feedback episode, you can always do so. We love audio feedback. You can call in at 1-260-577-CHAT. And that's 1-260-577-2428. But the easier way to contact the show now is we have an app that we are a part of. And that app is called the Zog Pod Collection of part of. And so you'll find the Sci-Fi Diner, you'll find Haiti in Focus, you'll find Podcasting Gear Show, but you will find the Dune Saga podcast there, and that phone number goes to all those shows, and you just need to call in and say, hey, I'm calling for the Dune Saga podcast, holla yo, and back on the show. And you can always email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com as well if you are not comfortable hearing your voice on air. And we're totally cool with that. But the app is called the Zog Pod Collective, the ZOGPOD Collective, and it can be found on any of the app stores. So Android, Amazon, iTunes, it's there, and it's free. I know it's free at least in the iTunes store, and I really need to check on whether it's free in the other stores. It's not more than 99 cents on the others, so it's a small way that you can, I guess, support our here as we're podcasting.
Oh, but I just want to also make a comment. If you're into listening to these kind of things live, we do record live, and there is a chat room where you can interact with us and other listeners in there. So you can find that at dunesagapodcast.com/live when we record. So there's a calendar on the Dune Saga Podcast website that lets you know what time and what day we're looking at recording. Sometimes that changes, so just kind of keep up to date with it. We also post on all of our social media when we're getting close to recording as well.
Yeah.
So lots of great ways to interact with us.
Yeah.
That's cool because you get instant feedback right there.
What's cool about the app, back to the app just a little bit, it'd be great if we could stream right to the app, wouldn't it? I don't think the app does that. But you can call in, you just hit a button and it dials the number. You don't even the number I gave you at the beginning, you don't even need to remember that number.
Wow.
So that's even better, yeah.
Well, let's jump right into this.
We
listener
got
feedback.
tons. We aren't doing that, right? We got enough reviews from you folks that we don't need to be touching those.
Correct. So just going in, we had a contest running last month, and it was for people who made comments on iTunes. And it was for new comments and old comments. You just had to let us know via email that you had commented, and Ryan White won. That's the name, correct?
Yep, I believe so.
Yep, Ryan White won Dune Messiah hardcover copy.
And did he give us his address?
Not yet.
Nope. So, Ryan, you're out there. Please email us your address. We'll try to email you as well. You have his email.
Yeah, I've
right?
got his email.
So we email you as well. But if you can get us your address, we will send that book right over to you.
Yeah, and there is another contest. I've got hardcover of Children of Dune to give away. So this time, I'm going to say all you have to do is email, or actually submit feedback in any way. The copy. No matter if you own it already. All you have to do is be continental U.S. That's the only thing, because shipping abroad is way too expensive.
Right.
So, jumping right into our feedback, then we have a call from Ben from Birmingham, Alabama. Let's hear what he has to say.
Why don't we go ahead and play that call?
Yeah.
Hey, fellas. This is Ben from Birmingham, Alabama, calling for the Dune podcast. I want to give you guys a couple quick pieces of information. There's been a lot of talk about Orange Catholic Bible. I will tell you, no spoilers, but it is covered in the school books briefly. Get a little bit more background on that. I know that's been a kind of a topic of discussion. And then I just got done listening to the listener feedback on House Carino, and there were some questions about what happens to House Vernius. And I can tell you that there is some background given, some flashbacks through the Paula Dune book that gives a little bit more light to that particular storyline. So hopefully those questions will be answered in the next few months. So I love what you guys are doing. I love the podcast. It's fun to listen to. It's good to know that there are other people asking some of the same questions that I've been. I've been reading Dune for probably 10 or 15 years now. I read it first when I was 16, and I'm going back through the books with you guys right now, and it's very exciting to kind of have a pool of other people to chime in on some of the same questions that I've got. So keep up the great work, and love to get that hardback copy. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you for calling in, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're a little late for the hardcover contest that was back 2 months ago that we ran that. But we'll discuss if we'll have you in the drawing coming up.
We should put him in for the next one. Definitely.
We'll put you in for the next one, Ben.
Yeah, definitely. So, anything he's saying that kind of stands out to you, Jim, David? I'll chime in here then.
Why don't you go first, Jim?
Okay. Well, I was very glad to hear that we're going to hear more about what happens to House Vernius in the next book.
Yeah.
I appreciate knowing that and not knowing exactly what is going to happen. So.
Yeah, I did start the book, and already, like I'm probably like 2 hours in, and within those 2 hours, we already have some mention of X in House Vernius.
Oh, cool.
So early on, there's just a brief mention. So
yeah.
I'm glad that we're going to get some more background to the Orange Catholic Bible in the school books, which we, of course, these are the only books we aren't really doing chronologically.
Yeah.
Because of, well, we want to kind of read them all together.
Right. Since they are a trilogy, it just makes sense. But I think that's really cool to find out that information.
Absolutely.
And we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, I just like hearing that somebody's reading along with us and enjoying this journey.
Absolutely.
Alongside, so.
David looked across the way. We both had smiles on our face when you said that, Ben. We like that people are going on this journey with us, because this is kind of the first time for me reading these books. David, you read most of these books before, and Jim, this is some of these books are first time for you as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some of you I know have been through this journey before, but we're glad that you are on with us this time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jim, why don't you read that email from Roland Smoker? Now, Roland actually wrote twice he wrote once prior to seeing David Lynch's Dune, and then he wrote in after. So you are actually reading the...
Okay. So Roland says, The following email was composed before viewing Dune 1984 movie. I have yet to see Dune on film and wanted to gather my thoughts and expectations beforehand. Seeing as once I see the movie, I won't be able to think about my expectation in the same way. I made a list of scenes I'd like to see on the film. I realize they may not all make this movie, and a list of things I'm curious about how they do on the film. Also, since this is an 80s movie, I expect a lot of mullets.
Let's just
So-
stop right there.
Okay.
Stop right there just for a second. Lots of mullets. You know, you want to see Patrick Stewart with mullet.
Yeah,
There's no other way around it.
and you get it.
And you do get it, yeah. What I like of what he's doing is he has not watched this movie. He's going in and he's setting up some expectations for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right. Once you've seen a movie, you can't go unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that he did this.
Yeah, I do too. I
Yeah.
do too.
Yeah.
Let's hear his list.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead. Continue with the list.
Okay, well, I just want to throw in, what about the Sardaukar with the backwards mohawks?
Oh yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so Roland says, scenes I'm looking forward to possibly seeing on the film. Paul's Gom Jabbar test, the Hunter-Seeker assassination attempt on Paul, Leto saving the miners from the spice factory operation from a worm, the poison gas tooth assassination attempt on the Baron, Paul and Jessica's escape from the Harkonnens in the sandstorm, the Water of Life ceremony, especially how it affected Aliyah in the womb, Paul's first ride of a worm, and the Fremen's attack on the Emperor's encampment, and finally he says Paul's duel with Fade Routha. Okay. And then it says, next, things I wonder how they'll do on the film. Personal shields. How will they show a personal shield surrounding a person without it being distracting? Still
They won't.
suits. The still suits cover the mouth, but covering the face is typically avoided on the film. Walking on the sand in a non-rhythmic pattern. I think this will look awkward on the film. Characters' personal thoughts, especially Yui's, Gurney Halleck's Inkvine scar, and Paul's visions. How will they show the visions, or just mention that he has them?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's talk about this a little bit. He might answer this a little bit later on, but let's talk a little bit about this list. He hits everything that's in the film.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I just want to point out Water of Life ceremony and how it affects Alia. That was a gross scene for me to see the special effect baby in the womb crawling around or squirming. Or whatever.
It was.
That was.
Yeah. What do you think about the character's personal thoughts? Because they do have this little voiceover going as the character's standing there about his thoughts, and that's a little bit odd.
It's hard to follow.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't some of it. I could be wrong, but I feel like there's at least one point where you talk, and it's kind of like, who's speaking?
Don't you
right
see
now?
it? Don't you see it with Leto? You see it with Yui, and
Mhm.
even Paul. You see it with,
And,
especially, and Jessica. And,
The Reverend Mother.
oh yeah,
Mahayam.
yeah. What do you think of Paul's visions? We didn't talk about this in the last show. What do you think of his visions? He looks into the place that Bene Gesserit cannot go.
Yeah, Jim, what do you think? I'm. I don't know.
I didn't think they were as good as they could have been.
Yeah.
And the personal shields were definitely distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do in the 80s when you're trying to show a personal shield? But it just didn't look.
Right. It didn't look. It didn't look good, especially since
I was thinking what they did when I saw that scene. What did they do in Star Wars when the Death Star had a shield around it? They just treated it as being there. You didn't see it.
Right.
They just assumed it was there. But I don't know how you would do that with a personal shield quite as easily.
I know in the mini-series it's just like a fuzz around them that you don't really see, but when you hit it, it distorts the air.
Right. Which I think is probably a better representation of it.
Yeah. Gurney's Inkvine scar.
Oh yeah.
I
Does Patrick even have it?
think he's got a scar on his cheek though. No?
No, I didn't.
No?
It's certainly nothing like when I picture the Ingvain scar. It's a prominent scar that you can't miss. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always mention of it, and nothing is really marring that beautiful face of Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Who would ever dare?
I know. I mean, after all.
Well, okay, so I'm going to move on, and I've got Roland's response after seeing the film. So let's see what he has to say here. He says, in regards to David Lynch's Dune, wow.
How do you really feel? How do you really feel, Roland? I mean,
yeah.
you're being too obscure.
Just spell it out a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I feel they tried to be too loyal to the book while at the same time diverging greatly from it at certain times. The beginning of the movie wasn't too bad, but it certainly went downhill well before the end. I give it a 1 out of 5 stars.
He was much harsher than we were.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mind a couple of the scenes. I was and I still laugh when I think of Paul's Worm Ride. The music at 2 minutes and 2 seconds in this video. Some of the things I was wondering how they were going to do in the film completely failed, and the personal shields, the way they did individual thoughts. However, I will say they did a good job with the still suits. Well, let's just take a moment and listen to the audio that he's speaking about.
So this will be a 3-minute clip.
One. Again, it is the legend.
Here it comes.
These are 15 of our finest warriors.
That pretty well does it.
Yeah, it's like actually pretty decent like score of classical-ish music, like really pounding you up to what's happening.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, bam!
I feel like I'm walking into like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra set. And I do like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but you expect that when you're listening to them.
Yeah, yeah.
So, wow. Jim, thoughts in the music here?
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I would love to direct this score.
Oh yeah. It'd be a great kind of a band type thing going on, and then bringing the electric guitars in. That would be fun to see done live.
It was
I think it was with the Sandworm and Paul on top, and he's looking longingly into Stilgar's eyes, and then and then they're riding off into the sunset.
I know that when it happened, I had the pleasure of sitting next to Roland, and the two of us were just like, "What?" The looks on their faces as soon as the music starts, it's just like it was too much to handle.
But you know what? It does sound pretty good when you talk about it in the big theater. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So, anyways, he did have some further thoughts on the Jodorowsky's Dune. Do you want to read them?
Yeah, sure. On to Jodorowsky's Dune, which he also saw with us. He said, I like Jodorowsky's idea about starting the movie off with a pirate spaceship attacking a spice carrier. The excellent way to start off a story whose beginning isn't very action-packed. However, he struck me as very stubborn when he was asking studios for $15 million. It sounded as though Jodorowsky was unwilling to budge an inch while at the same time expecting them to hand him what is a huge sum of money. Also, I'm not completely convinced the movie would have turned out well.
But okay, David Lynch is $42 million versus $15 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about it, even if the movie wouldn't have turned out well, you
Right.
still it would probably made back as $15 million.
Right. Now, I kind of wonder, is that $42 million including the money that they preliminary invested in Jodorowsky's Dune?
Yeah.
You know, like, does it include the money they paid them for the 2 years of trying to put it together?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to say.
It is
It's hard to say.
Roland did join us in the chat room. He said he just felt it was out of place for the movie.
So that was one of the most enjoyable moments, laughing at that and laughing at Sting stepping out of the shower. Together, it was just like perfect for me.
with the Count flying maniacally around him and
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Jim, why don't you go ahead and read what our next listener wrote in?
Yeah, Donal Behan. I hope I said that right. Gentlemen, as promised, I tried to keep it brief as I'm cognizant of time for your podcast should you choose to use it. I also included, out of vanity, a couple of pictures. I bought copies of the comic books released in relation to the movie, and excuse me, I had them mounted and so are displayed alongside my Blade Runner and Star Trek comics, which are also framed. I also purchased some movie stills, and I also had those mounted. Pure geekdom, but what the hell. I've also included a picture of my book collection, no Dune first edition, first printing as of yet, but one can hope. I do have a first of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I really love. Anyway, guys, I really enjoy the shows. I didn't get in at the get-go, but you join me and the dogs on our morning walks.
Right. So that's the first part of his email. He actually gives a pretty thorough review in just a second here. But let's talk about the pictures. I know that we'll have to kind of describe them here. Comic books, they're framed. Look at them.
Yeah. Now, we did post these pictures on our Facebook page in our collections album. So if anyone else has anything they want to share, if you post to the Facebook page or email to dunesagapodcast@gmail.com, we'll post it in our collections album.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a good way to do it. Jim, why don't you go ahead and read his reaction to the David Lynch Dune? Just underneath the...
Yeah. Gentlemen, I should first point out that my initial introduction to the Dune universe was by way of Lynch's film. I would have been no older than 18 when I would have first seen a VHS copy of the movie, as of yet, I have never seen it on the big screen. I loved the movie and sought the book out at my local library. I must admit to many a moment with my brow pursed in confusion as to what I had seen on the VHS tape and what I was now reading. While the film does follow the book, some license was obviously taken for entertainment value. I was lucky enough to be raised in a home where reading was not only encouraged, but my father was a writer. So a love of reading has always been part of my life. I have always considered that the written word surpasses the visual. Some film adaptations come close, but the beauty of the book for me is the images created by the reader themselves. Anyway, to the different versions of the film. I have at home in my parents' somewhere a VHS copy on a shelf beside my VHS copy of Blade Runner, which, considering I no longer have a VHS player, might just continue to gather dust for the foreseeable future. I have 3 different DVDs, one of which is a special television version. I also have the widescreen special edition, which is the cinema release with some extras on a second disc. I have only recently bought the Blu-ray version, which again is the theatrical version. It is this release which I understand is the one you will be reviewing for the podcast. So I will attempt to give you a rundown on the differences between both. The television version does not carry the Lynch name. Rather, it is a film by Alan Smithee. It has a longer introduction giving a history lesson of Dune universe, which you should see. It describes the human uprising against the thinking machines. It also mentions the schools, which are the subject of the latest novels. This opening would remind you of a Saturday morning TV show from the 70s. Cheap, but it's interesting nonetheless. The opening monologue by the Princess Irulan in the cinema release is my preferred choice. It can be heard in the background on Paul's view screen when Gurney, Yui, and Thufir walk in on him. In this version, it is shown in 4:3 for small TV screen, and so some of these scenes appear to be corrupted at the edges, which indeed they are when you do see the cinema release. There is the unusual TV background music soundtrack running during the movie. Think Saturday morning show again. Now, because this is a TV version, some of the harder scenes have been cut, even though it is a longer version than the cinema release. For instance, the heart plug scene with the Baron is missing. Every so often, a voiceover gives us a rundown of the characters who we meet for the first time or fills in with some background to the political situation. The actual picture quality is very poor when compared to today's HD standards, and the blue eyes are missing in some scenes. Our first meeting with the Fremen is disconcerting as they are not wearing still suits, even though they are in what appears to be open desert. Patrick Stewart gives a typical Royal Shakespeare performance in the first council meeting after landing on Arrakis, and we see him play the balisette, which are missing from your cut. Again, if possible, do watch them. It is during some of these scenes that the TV soundtrack distracts from the movie. There is a nice scene when Jessica is shown a crysknife by the chambermaid, but no blood is drawn yet. The blade did not shatter. The scene where Paul fights and kills a Fremen is nice, and we see his family, who Paul must now care for, having received his water. The lack of the blue eyes is really noticeable here. It is around here that I dislike this version of Jessica. She is hysterical and seems to have forgotten her training. One thing I've always thought as hypocritical for her is the comment that 1,000 deaths are not enough for Yui. Yet she is the one who had a boy child when instructed to have a girl. After thousands of years of genetic manipulation, she risks it all to please her Duke. Kettle calling the pot black, Jessica. There are some nice interactions between Paul and Stilgar around this part of the movie. You get a sense of the relationship that will evolve between them. There are some doublings of scenes used earlier in the film with little extras of the Fremen running. The final climatic scenes run pretty much as the theater version. I would recommend watching the introduction for curiosity value, and the Patrick Stewart scenes because it's him. The scene where Jameis's water is given to Paul is nice too. So the $64,000 question, which version is best? The Blu-ray theatrical version is for me. Reasons are the full widescreen viewing, the tidying up of the blue eyes, and the audio is so much better. But one good thing about the different versions is the excuse to own the different versions.
Well, I wasn't aware there was such a huge difference between the TV version and what we saw, when we saw it at Penn Cinema here. And what I like about this, it sounds like some of this extra footage some of the extra footage that we talked about, maybe that hour and a half of footage that wasn't included, they used some of this footage to splice into the TV version of it.
Yeah.
Isn't that what
Yeah.
it's sounding like to you?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
whatever it was, David Lynch didn't like it. I know that's why he took his name off.
Yeah. Yeah, but it sounds like there's some things that were missing that I'm like, why didn't we see that in the David Lynch movie that I saw? You know, so I think that's great. I feel like I have to go watch this if I can get a hold of it.
Good luck.
Yeah, why?
I mean, I can't sit through it again
Well,
for a long time.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe late at night when I can't sleep,
There you go.
I'll cue it up. Anything else he's saying, Jim, David, that kind of stick out to you here?
I thought it was really cool that he took the time to spell out the differences for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I personally, I wouldn't have known, what they were, because I'm not going to watch it again. So
yeah. Well, the fact that they have him playing the balisette, I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of see him carried around, right? That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, you can see him carry a pug around too.
Yeah. You're fascinated with him carrying around that
I don't know
pug.
what it is. These dogs in these movies. It's just like they're such a small thing, but
right.
it just kind of cracks me up.
Yes. The pug must live. The pug. Oh man. Well, let's move into some other feedback here, and this is from. Let me scroll down and find out who this is actually from. This is from Brian Burnett. Am I saying that correct?
Brent.
Okay. This is from. You'll have to edit this out. This is from Brent, and so let's move into our next piece of listener feedback. This is from Brent. He says, "Howdy, y'all. I'm not aware until recently there was such a thing as a Dune Saga podcast, but I stumbled across while looking for something else and said, this looks intriguing. And indeed it has been. I'm going to try to be brief, but if I fail, apologies. First, let me give all three of you kudos on the podcast itself. I've listened to every episode now, except for the most recent one, the Dune episode, and I've enjoyed them even when I found myself disagreeing with you. You guys are obviously fans, and have a lot of energy and passion, plus the ability to communicate clearly. Right there, you're ahead of the curve compared to the majority of podcasts I've listened to. So take a bow, gents. You're doing terrific work. I'm extremely conflicted on the subject of the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson books. I'm a big fan of the original Frank Herbert novel, and to a lesser extent, the sequels he wrote. In some ways, I credit Frank Herbert's Dune with bridging the gap between childhood and adulthood for me in terms of my reading skills. I was 10 when the movie came out and did not go to see it, so I did what I usually did when I missed out on seeing the movie that I wanted to see. I went and bought the novelization and read it. In this instance, of course, it wasn't a novelization at all, but the actual novel. I had never seen anything that approached reading. I never even approached reading anything of that depth and complexity. I'd be a complete liar if I said I understood a word of it. But it drew me in. And when I finished reading it, I turned back to the beginning and started reading it a second time. I understood it a bit better this time. I probably read it 6 times or so over the course of the next year, and I got more and more out of it as I progressed. Eventually, I tackled the sequels as well, and while I never reread them compulsively the way I did Dune, I did enjoy them. Fast forward to 2000 when House of Atreides came out. I was totally stoked for that book, and for the most part, it did not disappoint me. I thought Herbert Jr. and Anderson did a very good job of capturing the tone of the originals, but at the same time, I could not help but feel something was missing. And of course, something was missing. Frank Herbert. Sure, he was there in spirit, sort of, but his complexity, not so much. His voice, not really. His imagination, not exactly. For me, there was a ghost of him lingering in those pages, but his soul was absent. That's beautifully worded, by the way.
Yeah.
I've read, with the exception of The Winds of Dune, Sisterhood of Dune, and the recent Mentats of Dune, each of the new novels as they come out, and I've run hot and cold in them. Taken on their own merits, they are enjoyable. I understand why fans of the originals would struggle with them, though. The lack of Frank Herbert is genuinely difficult to deal with. I did not care for the Paul of Dune at all, and while I bought each of the next 3 novels when they came out, I have not yet been able to bring myself to read them. I will probably use your podcast as an excuse to do so, just so I don't feel left out. Well, good. You guys have indicated on your podcast that you feel it's unfair to compare these Herbert and Anderson novels to the Frank Herbert originals. About 25% of me agrees with you, but the other 75 disagrees pretty vehemently. If as an author one wishes to not have his work compared to Dune, then the last thing in the world he should do is to write a prequel to Dune. If he does write a prequel to Dune, then he's got to expect his work is going to be put under the microscope. Is it unfair? Not so as far as I'm concerned, no. There's nothing particular to Dune about that. I say the same as somebody attempting to write new Middle-earth novels. Each time I read the new James Bond novel, I compare it to Ian Fleming. Why wouldn't I? If the author wished for me not to read his book that way, he shouldn't have written a James Bond novel. Writing within the Dune universe was always going to be a tough road to hoe for any writer. I don't think Brian and Kevin have done a bad job personally. They probably could have done a better job, but they certainly could have done worse. Even the worst of their books, unquestionably Paul of Dune, in my opinion, has value at times. If nothing else, they reinforce just how incredibly good Frank Herbert's originals were. In the end, I'm glad to see the Herbert Anderson novels having given their due in the form of an ongoing podcast. Love them, like them, hate them, or ignore them, these books have been popular and cumulatively represent a significant series of science fiction novels. They pale in comparison to the originals, in my opinion, and I think that anyone who chooses to read them first, thereby ensuring that Dune reads Shudder as a sequel to House Carino, is making a serious mistake, except in the case of doing it for their podcast. That is like doing it for science, which is admirable. But still, they are good books for the most part, and they do deserve to be paid some serious attention. You guys have done just that. It was a job well done, too. I've not always agreed with you, but I've always been entertained by you. Can't wait to hear the episodes covering Frank Herbert books. If the episodes about the spin-offs have been this good, the remaining Fs ought to be even better. No pressure, Brad. And then he says, P.S. I got a recommendation for a future episode. You guys ought to read the parody novel National Lampoon's Dune, D-O-O-N. I don't remember much about it, but I do know I was 11 or 12 or whatever. I thought it was a height of hilarity. Here's a link. And we can put that in our show notes. I have a copy of that sitting on my shelf over here, and we will probably review that when we get through the novels as well. Very diplomatic in the way he's saying stuff.
Yeah.
So,
thanks for writing, Brent.
Man.
This is good. A lot of good stuff here, especially your line about, there was a ghost of Frank Herbert, but it was missing the soul. I think that nails it just right. Man, I don't even know where to start. For me, I think my main thing is, he said here, anyone who chooses to read them first is making a mistake. I think if you've never been exposed to the universe, I'll agree. You might be making a mistake, but now that I've read them this way, I'm getting used to the flow, and I'm sure by the end, this will be probably the way that I reread them from now on.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm torn because I feel like, having read the prequels, fleshed out the Dune universe for me in a way that when I got to Frank Herbert's Dune, that I understood a little bit more what was going on than maybe I would have. And Dune is a pretty heady book to get into. I mean, it's not an easy read. You don't just pick this up for light, Sunday afternoon reading. I mean, you have to invest time into it. And so if you come to it with a history of Dune and a little bit understanding in the background, even though the tone's different, obviously, and it's not Frank Herbert, and certainly stylistically, it's like it's reading every single Middle-earth ripoff book, and then you're then going to read Tolkien. I mean, there is a significant difference, but I saw extreme value in reading these books first, in myself. Jim, thoughts on that?
I agree with you, Scott, completely. And that email was really good and well written. And I appreciate your position, even though I kind of disagree with it. I
And I'm glad you got with us. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jim. I didn't mean to cut you.
definitely no problem. And I'm glad that I am reading them in the order that I am reading the books. I've gotten a lot more, I think, out of Frank Herbert's work with the universe being fleshed out by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you there. That's why I'm saying for me, this is probably how I'll reread them from now on.
What do you think about him saying that that it's unfair? I think we've made the comment in the past that it's unfair for people to say Brian J. Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson are comparing these to the master writer of Dune. That is an unfair comparison.
I feel like we've kind of covered this before, and especially last listener feedback episode. I know we covered it really heavily. I get what he's saying, and I understand it.
Right.
And part of me, like his 25-75%, 25% of me agrees, 75% of me doesn't. And I think it's mostly just because when a lot of the stuff that we're responding to with the bad reviews specifically are really bad reviews, and they're people who attack it, but they don't attack it as eloquently as he has presented his email. You know what I mean? Like, they don't give ideas out like he has set them out here in such a nice way.
Yeah, he was much better thought out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and basically, when you boil down these really bad reviews, they're very basic. It's not the exact same thing, and that's why I'm upset. And that's the part of me that's like, you can't just expect it to be identical and get crazy pissed off. Like, you have to understand that it's a different writer.
Yeah. At the same time, what he's saying, when he does say that, are you kidding me? People are going to compare them? Well, absolutely. I mean, if you are a fan of the original Dune universe and series, you will be a fan of not you will be a fan, but you will notice some stark differences in writing style, depth, and tone of characters.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no other way, and the way they write stuff and how complex the novels are.
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick side here. Roland in the chat room, how would you read the books again if you were going to do it? Would you read Herbert first, or would you read in this order?
Yeah, so we can ask. We'll see if he responds to that. Anything else that Brent's saying that we should talk about? Nope.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on then, and we'll come back to that and talk about it if Roland comments here in just a little bit. David, why don't you take talking about Roland? We have a little question. We have a question by him.
Actually,
and
this is
is this going to be?
This is something else. This is our question for this month.
Okay, so well, Roland did pose a question on the poll for last month, and I have this poll in front of me.
Yeah, let's find out what the results are.
So the question was: would you like to use melange to A, see the future / past, or B, to live longer and general? So, what do you think it came in at?
I'm going to say in general, live longer.
Live longer. How about for you, Jim?
Yeah, same. Live longer.
And that was the winner.
Really?
50,
wow.
And 48 said to have that prescience, see the future and past. And Philip wrote down at the bottom, why not both? But that's kind of cheating. But Roland did go on to say that he would like to read it in the order they came out, if I were reading them at all, because that's the way the people read them originally, and they would have had to read them. So he's a fan of. He's kind of lining up with what Brent said.
Okay. Hey. Each their own, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's move on then. And Jim, why don't you read this email by Ryan White? Ryan White, of course, winning the copy of the book this month.
Yeah. Jim, skip the first little paragraph there. It's just about light.
Okay. It says, by the way, the live recording chat room experience was awesome. What do you want me to skip again? Guys, I wanted to make sure I include... Oh, I see.
Yeah, you started right. Maybe just change the wording a little so it sounds...
Okay.
Yeah, just...
like, hey, guys.
Hey, guys, by the way, or hey, guys, the live recording, something like that.
Yeah.
You got it. Hey guys, the live recording chat room experience was awesome. I had so much fun listening to things as they happened and also talking with others in the chat room about what seemed to be random topics to you because where you were in the recording. We were extrapolating data and going into more depth on things where you couldn't because you have bogged things down. It would have bogged things down. Sorry about that. The chat would be great for anyone, especially those with attention issues. I just listened to it again tonight and noticed some things I missed because of the chat room. I am looking forward to the live recording of the discussion of the Lynch movie, and I will be more than likely be lynching it as much as I can. Oh man, that fun will get old during the recording. Go ahead and embrace it. It won't go away. Good luck with it. I'm burning through the books on the Children of Dune now since finishing Dune, Paul, Messiah, and Winds after finishing Sisterhood and Mentats. I have read all the other Brian and KJA books and the original Franks already and am having a hard time reading anything else. I may have to go back and catch up with you.
A little bit obsessed, huh? No, that's fine. We did have a great chat room. I think maybe the chat room's a bit light tonight, but it could just be because it was the way we publicized it, or maybe we didn't give it much publicity.
We changed our evenings, so it's possible.
That's possible. They're thinking tomorrow night, so we'll try to do better at it. But we did they had a while. There were like 6-8 people in there, and people were just kind of like chatting back and forth, and I missed half what was going on in the chat room.
But it looked great. I've heard from several people that they really enjoyed the time.
So we will definitely do that. And if you have not joined our chat room, we'll let you know. We'll publicize it on Facebook and the Twitter, and we'll put posts out that'll let you know when our next recording time is. And we'll try to stick to it. Maybe we can decide that before we wrap things up here.
And there's a calendar on the website that shows you what day and what time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our next thing is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynching it. We did not talk about lynching David Lynch's movie, did we?
No, but it's a great. I don't know how we missed that.
Yeah, no.
David did get that impression, though.
Nah.
Yeah, it's true.
It was. Yeah.
I haven't been very favorable to the movie.
All right. So let's talk. This is from is it Matthias? Can you see it?
Max.
No, it's above Max Nolan. That's the name that I need.
Oh, okay. Mattias.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Matthias.
Mattias. All right, our next email comes from Mattias. We could be mispronouncing your name, so please forgive us if I pronounced it incorrectly. But he writes, "Hey, you guys, since you're watching the Dune 84 movie, I thought I would recommend the fan edit of the movie called Dune, the alternative edition Redux by Spice Driver." So this is what it said. As you might guess, it's unofficial edit of the original movie. It's an incredibly ambitious project that aims to combat much of the criticisms the movie received, as well as improve on the flow of the narrative to flesh things out and make it easier to understand, plus about 1 million other improvements. As a result, it has become a baffling 3-hour-long movie and has been generally dubbed as the definitive version of the movie by those who have seen it. Just a little friendly tip, here are the links. So here are the links to, and I guess we can put them in our show notes, right?
Yeah.
There's a link to the project itself with a comprehensive list of changes, reviews, and whatnot. And there's a link to it. And as for the acquisition, I don't know if it's a bit hush-hush about these things since it's technically piracy, although it's uploaded by the author himself. Do whatever you want to. Like I said, just a friendly tip. So there's a torrent link to it, basically. As for the original movie itself, I personally liked it despite its flaws. They got the aesthetics right. Totally right. Casting was great, its epicness unmatched, and the soundtrack by Toto is amazing, but is indeed a lot to take in. It's sort of the complete opposite when it comes to the it was way easier to grasp, but it looked pretty cheap, like it was all recorded on a soundstage. Some odd casting choices as well. And don't get me started on the costume. The follow-up miniseries, Children of Dune, got a lot better, though, and I would agree with that. In conclusion, in future podcasts, it would be interesting to hear you guys compare the pros and cons of the 84 movie with the miniseries. as well as some input on what you think lies in store for Dune in the future. For instance, should it become a TV series like Game of Thrones, or a trilogy of movies like Lord of the Rings? Sorry how this turned out rather lengthy. When I'm passionate about something, I'm out of control. Keep up the good work. Um, Balakafa.
Kifa.
Thank you. Balakifa. Sorry. Did I mispronounce that yet? I didn't get it right, did I?
I think that's the saying. Do they say that in the book? They say it in the movie.
Okay, Balakifa.
Balakifa.
Okay. Kind regards, Mattias. So thank you for writing in. I do have to actually, I know you're not going to sit through the movie, but I wouldn't mind seeing this fan edit. And it sounds like what they've done is taken probably some of the TV footage and spliced it in with the regular movie footage.
Yeah, or maybe there's stuff on the DVD like Jim was talking about.
Yeah, and they just re-edited
it back in.
Yeah.
I like what you had to say. That might get me interested in seeing it, but maybe if we give it another 5-10 years.
Watch it.
Yeah, until I watch it. Or if I do it with a group of people. I'm not going to do it on my own.
Yeah, so you're saying if I con you over some Friday night with food, maybe you'll come watch it with me.
What's that? Huh? Food?
Yeah, food, huh? What? Hey. So let's talk. The one thing he didn't mention: should this become a series like Game of Thrones, or become a 3-part like Lord of the Rings?
I love this question, but I'll let you guys talk first.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think?
No, I would not want to see it as a TV series. First of all, I'm too busy to watch it. Secondly,
if you stop doing a podcast every night of the week.
Yeah, seriously. But I would just hate to see a group of idiotic writers get a hold of it and rip it apart.
Now, I get what you're saying, but look at Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead and like how they're doing things, adapting things for TV. And although I'm not fans of the source material, I keep hearing that it's stuff that people who are fans of the source material can get right behind, and not just get behind, like go gaga for.
Yeah. I suppose I would give it a chance, but I remember last year Under the Dome.
Yeah.
How it really went downhill. It started out very strong. The first 4 or 5 episodes were incredible, and then the writing just got weak. And I would hate to see that happen with something like Dune or a property like that I would care about. They belong in books. Just like Star Trek belongs on television, it doesn't do well in the theaters. Dune belongs in books.
Yeah. See, man, I would love to see this. Roland would love to see it as a miniseries, but I feel like the miniseries has been done. But I wouldn't mind seeing this as maybe a 10-episode per season look at it, and where they take and I think they should take it as the Frank Herbert books, and they can use like Peter Jackson did this with Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, right? Hobbit was originally two movies. He split into 3 because he pulled in other source material to kind of flesh it out, and he could use the Kevin J. Anderson, Brian Herbert books to kind of flesh out the story a little bit, give background to information that maybe was kind of glossed over in the novel, and really capture the core of Frank Herbert's writing. You could get, what are there, 6? There's at least 6 books. You could get at least 6 seasons out of this, and if it was done in the way that the writers are tackling the Game of Thrones series or the Walking Dead series, with a focus on the drama, the political intrigue, the ecological themes, I think you could really do this well.
Yeah.
You get the right person, and it's going to have to be done by something other than a network show. It's going to need to be done by someone like AMC or TNT or
BBC.
BBC even does something like it.
It's going to cost a lot of money, though. It's going to cost a lot of money.
Tons of makeup money. So
Yeah.
but I see what you're saying, Jim. Though I mean, I do. It's in a hypothetical world. I'm in agreement with Scott. It would have to be a short season, and each season should represent a book.
And like Game of Thrones, I mean, Game of Thrones are throwing money into it. I mean, if they put the budget they put in Game of Thrones into Dune,
yeah,
I think it would come off well.
yeah, and they could do flashbacks to the house books. Like
They could to fill in the gaps,
Yeah.
right? Again, just to kind of flesh out. Roland didn't mean a TV series, not a miniseries.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I don't know. That some good thoughts. I don't really see this as a movie. I think the movie's been done, and it just doesn't translate well into the movie.
I don't think it's going to work as a movie. Yeah. I especially think it doesn't work with the movie with the way that Dune ends. I think that if you somehow you went halfway into Dune Messiah or something like that, like it might make more sense. But it does, as a book, it has a great climactic ending. But as a movie, you're just kind of like, oh.
Well, which is why I think it might work as a 10-episode season, because we get a resolution next season, or the continuation next season.
Right, and Dune Messiah is a great follow-up.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, thank you for writing in and eliciting this great discussion here. Jim, why don't you take this next one by Maxwell?
Okay, from Max Nolan. Hey guys, my name is Maxwell Nolan. I'm a 22-year-old American illustrator and fairly new to reading the Dune series. I watched the sci-fi adaptations a lot and when I was growing up, but I am finally getting around to reading them. Enjoying your podcast and keep it up, Maxwell, and he includes some links.
Yeah, I checked these out. He's got some Dune artwork at these links.
Oh, really?
So he's got a Tumblr and a DeviantArt page.
Did you ask him if we could post any in the Facebook page?
I didn't, but I will definitely post the links at least in the show.
If we can put the links in the show notes, that would be great, because that would give people an idea to see his art. So maybe a sample of some of his artwork, if we can get permission to do that.
Yeah, I'll write it.
I think it'd be great. So it sounds like something that he's in. It's kind of drawing him into actually reading the books, which is kind of cool, which is not all that different than the David Lynch film drawing you, Jim, into reading the books.
Right. It's the next generation, Jim. That's
right.
how it works.
That's right. Jim, the next generation.
Okay, I'll take the next one. Okay, this one's from Mark Baggs, and he says, I love the Dune Saga podcast. Did you stop doing the Dune in 10 part? I didn't get it from the last prequel. I read these books a while ago, and I don't want the Dune in 10 perfect for me. Please start doing Dune in 10 again, or you can recap a little more in the regular podcast. Thanks for doing the podcast any which way you go, Mark.
So, David, tell him, why didn't we get a Dune in 10 for House Carino?
I was overwhelmed by the story. Dune in 10 is it's something that I fear doing, and then I struggle through it, and then when I'm done, I'm really happy. And then I'm especially happy to hear how many of you guys really enjoy Dune and 10, which really makes me feel good for putting that much work into it. But with House Carino, there was many factors, illness, and then just time, and then it was just like pressure on myself.
Right.
And I couldn't do it. We said this last time. If anyone would like to try and tackle it, I would.
We will include it and put it up.
I will record it. I will edit it down to make sure that it flows properly and all that stuff. And then, if the writing process is the hard part. The recording is easy. I can do that. No problem.
Yeah. So if you want to write it out and send it to David, or send it to us at the Dune Saga Podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah.
David would be happy to read it.
Right. But we're back with Dune and 10 for Dune.
That's right.
So it will continue on from here on out, and I'm hoping that I won't succumb to that kind of pressure for myself again and miss another one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So David Burns, right? Just listened to the Dune in 10 and had to say, well done, guys, for being able to condense so much into so little time. You all deserve some sort of medal by the time you've had to do. one that does the Dune in 10. Jim and I just kind of sit back and kick back and let him tackle it. So,
Well, thanks, guys.
No, we
Thanks,
do.
guys.
We do appreciate that.
I have to say I draw heavily from Jim keeps very detailed notes of every chapter, color coded for storylines.
Right.
I use that quite often.
Yeah,
So.
that's awesome. Jim, go ahead.
Okay. Dave writes, "Gentlemen, excellent show. I just started reading the series for the first time a few weeks ago and just wrapped up with Children of Dune. Have only to read the original 3 so far. Now that I have found your podcast, I think I'm going to jump in and follow along with wherever you are from this point forward. Love the Diner podcast as well. Dave Carrick."
Well, thank you, Dave, for listening to both the Diner and the Dune Saga podcast. I'm glad that you are joining us on the ride.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. For those who may not know, Scott does a podcast called the Sci-Fi Diner Podcast, and every now and then Jim and I pop up on there.
Yep, absolutely.
Throw our 2 cents in.
Jim was on it last night discussing, is Batman really a superhero?
I can't wait to hear that.
Actually, him and I were kind of sitting back and letting 2 of the other hosts talk about it because they were much more intelligent. Right, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good discussion. But David, do you want to read this next one? This is by Brad.
Yeah, Brad writes again. He says, "This was a good episode, but parts of it really turned me off." And he's referring to our episode on Dune.
Okay.
The original Dune. "In no way should Dune be held accountable for the prequel novels. If Duncan Idaho and House Harkonnen is inconsistent with Dune, then it is not due to anything other than Herbert and Anderson getting the character wrong in their books. You guys talked about that and several other points of plot and or character as though Frank Herbert had somehow failed to do the prequel novels justice. In my opinion, that is an extraordinarily wrong-headed way to look at Dune, and I had a difficult time finishing the episode as a result. I'm glad I did, though. There was plenty of good conversation, especially regarding some of the stuff in the appendices. The problem with reading the books in order of the story's chronology is that doing so weighs the prequels unfairly and gives them weight his coattails. They are doing so fairly capably, but still, pretending that they are doing anything more than harvesting crops out of somebody else's garden is a major misreading of the entire series. The worst is yet to come, unfortunately. Despite the occasional inconsistencies, I enjoyed both the Legends of Dune and Prelude to Dune series. Paul of Dune, on the other hand, is a terrible novel, and it's especially terrible in terms of the way it fits, or in this case, doesn't fit. In with Dune side, I don't know if I'm dreading episodes or if I'm foolishly looking forward to them. Little of both, I guess. So let's take a moment to respond to this. Now, he had left this comment on the website, and so anyone else can also respond to it there if they agree or disagree with what he had to say. And I had responded to him personally on there, and I have his response to my response, but I think that we'll handle it as the 3 of us here.
You know, he makes a good point, right? Because we are coming at Dune, and especially for those of us that never got into the Dune series, we at an angle through the lens of Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert. So when we jump into Frank Herbert's world after being immersed for 6 novels into Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert, we of course are going to be looking at it saying, whoa, this character is different than what I've experienced. The feel, the flow, and I mean, he's right. Frank Herbert developed these characters first, and they are. Frank, I mean, it doesn't make what Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert did wrong. It just makes it different, and maybe I connected with the characters differently than I did in Dune because I grew to love them, and the way they were handled and dealt with and developed is much more than what. I mean, Duncan Idaho very briefly developed not really developed all that much in the Dune book, but we have entire storylines in the house books that really kind of focus on them.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I understand what he's saying because I'm coming at it from the lens of the 6 books, and if you read them in the order they were released, which is what Roland was saying in the chat room, you read it in the order it was released, then we would have had a slightly different perspective on it. And there's nothing I can. It's like Roland said about when he made the comments about the Lynch movie. Once you have seen and read these prequels, you can't go into Dune without making some sort of comparison. If you're reading them chronologically, you are going to be you're going to be at a disadvantage with viewing it maybe the way Frank Herbert intended them to be viewed.
Right. I agree with what you're saying there. I think, for me, part of this experience is taking in the story as a whole and not necessarily, I mean, we are doing it, but in my mind, like deep down, I'm not necessarily being like, this is one author compared to another. This is one big story, and I'm taking in all of the story, as it happens, and it's just, different kind of writing styles in the story. I forget my exact response to him. Do you have it up?
I do.
Maybe you want to.
I can certainly do that. Before I go into that, Jim, any comments from your end about this?
He raises a fair point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is something I just want to add, and I think I say it in his. I like that we've gotten some negative feedback, both last time and now. I mean, no one's like making fun of us or anything.
No.
But to me, that means you're listening, and that means a lot to me. Even if you're saying, you're doing something that I disagree with.
Right, and we are going to view this through a different lens, just because we chose, I think you said in an earlier email, we chose to tackle these in a chronological way, and that is going to color the way we paint these universe. So because these 6 books come prior, as I said before, when we go into Frank Herbert, they're going to be different.
Yeah.
They just are.
And do you have the?
I do. Do you want me to read your comments here?
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, hopefully my comments do not come across as being too negative. This is from David. I think reading the novels in the order that is an interesting experiment if it's absolutely nothing else. So just in case I didn't get the point across in the various bits of feedback I said. Oh, wait, this is still him.
Underneath.
Oh, I'm
in between 2 of his, yeah.
No, there's just says our response, and there's nothing there.
Huh?
I can just click the link here. We'll have to go back and edit it.
Okay.
All right, let me just. I'm calling it up right now.
Okay.
Huge thunderstorm raging outside. Yeah. All right. Okay. I hear what you're saying here. So, David, you responded to this in a comment. I'm going to actually read your feedback because you don't have it in front of you. I hear what you're saying, and I'm unsure we'll address this in more depth in the next listener feedback episode, although we did, show we record. But I wanted to respond now about the effects of reading the books. It bugs me, too. It really used to rub me the wrong way, to sure. However, in deciding to go down this path chronologically, it's opening up a lot of interesting doors and insight. I know for me, I feel like I know the characters more deeply. You're not the first person to bring up that you felt that we were holding Dune up to the standards of the prequels when we should have been the other way around. I don't think this is how we meant to come across. Moreover, we're trying to point out the differences that are there and to fill in the gaps the best we could. I'm gaining a greater love for the Herbert Anderson books as we read along, and as a result, I know I'm starting to hold them at a higher level than I used to, though. Not quite up to the original, mind you, but also not as far as below them as I used to. And as to why we chose to read them chronologically, well, number one, you really need the prequels, at least the Legends of Dune book. And 2, people rarely take a look at the series as different experiment because we're putting the new and old up against each other in an unconventional way, and as a result, you'll get those times when there are gaps to be addressed. I can only imagine the mind of Pharrell when we get to Hunters of Dune. Ha ha ha. Thanks so much, Brant, for coming along this journey with us. Your support and contribution and thoughts mean a lot to us, especially when we're being called out. That means you're really listening, as you said, David.
So, and then he responded to that, and he said, hopefully my comments did not come across as being too negative. I think reading the novels in that order is an interesting experiment, if absolutely nothing else. So, just in case I didn't get the point across in the various bits of feedback I've sent, I think the podcast is highly worthwhile thing, and that you guys are doing a marvelous job with it. It's just that for me, it was an experiment that was somewhat doomed to failure from the outset. Does that mean it wasn't worth doing? Absolutely not. When the prequels have worked, they've worked pretty well. For example, I thought that both Hunters of Dune and Sandworms of Dune were pretty solid. All the more so because of the work Herbert and Anderson had put into Legends of Dune trilogy. It is not as good as Frank. Is it as good as Frank? It's good on its own right, and that's worth praising. So, yeah, I mean, I think that in the end, we're on a mutual level, you know, and I'm glad that he wrote in about that there. I know that other people have brought that up in different ways, and we're doing this, and it's different, and I think that's one of the reasons we're doing it, because it's so different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think is there some stuff going on in the chat room there?
Just that Ryan White joined us. Just joined in. So welcome Ryan to the show. Well, we did get some other feedback on iTunes. Wanted to share some of the reviews that came out in that, and then I think we're going to move toward wrapping up this long listener feedback, and that's fine. So, Jim, I'll take the first one, and you can take the second one. Okay?
All right.
From Admiral Marius, I think, is the guy said, a fantastic trek through the Dune universe, he writes, giving us 5 stars, so thank you for that. Remember reading Dune? Remember reading all the Dune books? Remember reading all the new Dune books? No? Well, Scott, Jim, and Dave will guide you from Seleucus Secundus to Arrakis to Catan and all chronological order, and then discuss them in great detail. The good, the bad, the puzzling are all fodder for their spirited, respectful, yet not rose-tinted view of one of the premier universes in the world of science fiction. So thank you for that. We really do appreciate that sort of feedback, and glad that you're listening and joining us and enjoying our romp through the universe.
Yeah.
I know that I am thoroughly enjoying this. I'm glad that that David, you twisted my arm into doing this. So
it was so hard to get you involved.
so.
Okay, and then
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I know who Admiral Marius is, and I just want to say thanks, Rick. Very much appreciated. All right, and then Holy Khakis from the United States of America writes, finally a podcast with Melange, rating 5 stars. There haven't been Dune podcasts, so when I found this one, I knew I had to at least give it a try. I don't know anyone else who likes Dune, so there is no one around to bounce ideas off of or to discuss the Dune universe. I was not disappointed by the podcast. The 3 guys have just finished reading the book before doing the podcast, and since they are now covering 1 book a month, there is plenty of time to catch up with them. If you like Dune, you should definitely give this podcast a try.
I agree. Definitely give us a try. We're glad that you are joining us here for this journey, and thanks for the kind words and the great review. And it is 1 book a month, and that's intentional because it takes me about a month to get through the book.
Yeah.
Going through it, and it seems doable and gives some breathing time in it. Do a feedback podcast a little bit more often, but Jim, that Holy Khakis is Ryan White. So Ryan, thank you for that review. He's in the chat room, said that's him. So
yeah, cool.
Way to go, Ryan.
Yeah, so we appreciate you leaving that.
Another big congratulations to Ryan. He just joined us in the chat, but Ryan, you were our winner this month, so you won the hardcover copy of Dune Messiah. So I'll be in touch with you via email.
Yeah, you can, and maybe if you can send us your email address, that would be great.
Yeah. So every month we have been having a question go out, And
Right.
we covered earlier the results from this last question go through. And you have read that Muad'Dib had no playmates his own age on Caladan. The dangers were too great, but Muad'Dib did have wonderful companion teachers. There was Gurney Halleck, the troubadour warrior, troubadour warrior. We will sing some of Gurney's songs as you read along the book. There was Toofer Howat, the old Mentat master of assassins, who struck fear even into the heart of the Fadishah Emperor. There was Duncan Idaho, the sword master of Ginaz, Dr. Wellington Yu, a name black in treachery, but bright in knowledge. The Lady Jessica, who guided her son in the Bene Gesserit way, and of course, the Duke Leto, whose qualities as a father have been long overlooked. And this is from A Child's History of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. So, the question for this month is, who would you rather have as a sidekick going on your adventure? Gurney Halleck, Toofer Howat, Duncan Idaho, Huey Wellington, the Lady Jessica, or Duke Leto?
Yeah. Trail.
Yeah.
Oh my. I know who I'd pick, and it would not be you, Wellington.
Yeah.
So you're gonna put this up in a poll on the site?
Yeah, I'll put it up a poll. It'll be we'll post it on Twitter, we'll post it on Facebook, but it'll also be, if you're having trouble finding this post, it'll be on the bottom of the post for the main episode for David Lynch and the listener feedback for that you're currently listening to now. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I believe that's about it. Do we have anything else we need to add to this? That's a long list of feedback. We had a lot of great feedback. You have no idea. We appreciate your feedback so much. It's so important for us to get your feedback and to hear from you. And it totally makes hearing from you, even when you disagree with us, we want to hear that. It's great. And many times we concede the point. So
if you see BS, call BS.
Right, absolutely. We want to be called on the carpet when we're wrong, or when we say something. We're in the heat of the moment. We're talking off the cuff. Sometimes we say things, and we do think through these. But sometimes a different perspective is good to hear. We definitely want that.
Right, that's the only way you grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want to get in touch with us for next time, there's many ways you can do it. We'd love to include your feedback in our next listener feedback show. You can email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. You can comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/dunesagapodcast. Send us a tweet at dunesagapodcast. You can comment on dunesagapodcast.com on any of the posts there. And we monitor all of that stuff. We usually respond fairly quickly as well.
Right.
But you can enter in all those ways. Now, this month we're also running another competition. Their book. We've got a hardcover copy of Children of Dune. It's the 80s version. And in order to be entered...
Does it have a good electric guitar soundtrack in the background?
It's standard electric guitar.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
soundtrack in the background.
Right. The book.
Yeah. In order to be into the drawing, all you need to do is send feedback for our next episode for Paul of Dune. The feedback can be about Paul of Dune, about any comment on talk about, and your name will be put into the drawing, and we will tell you on the next listener feedback show.
Absolutely.
So check the website for the calendar to know when that comes out.
And there's one other way that you can get a hold of us, and that is by going to one of the app stores and downloading our app.
That's right.
That's right, and you can actually, if you want to call in and leave feedback, you can do straight through into the app. And so the app is called, once again, is the ZogPod Collective, ZOGPOD Collective, and you can download it it's free in iTunes right now. I'm not sure how much longer it'll be there. And it's free because it was supposed to actually cost a little bit when it came out, but they released it free, and I'm fine with that because it gets it out there into your hands. And all you have to do is hit a button to call us. If you do email me through it, I'll get the email either way, and we'll get it to the appropriate channels. I think it goes to Podcasting Guru, which is at gmail.com, which is one of my other shows. It's a collection of podcasts, not just Dune podcasts, but my many other podcasts as well. But you can easily listen to it and respond and interact with us through that app as well.
And while we're on the topic of such things, can you give us the number for our hotline?
You're gonna make me scroll back up to the. If you want to call us without going to the app, it is 1-260-577-CHAT. That's 1-260-577-2428.
Great. So once again, for the Dune Saga podcast, I'm David Moulton.
I'm Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood. And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
Awesome.
Did great. You didn't leave any silence for us to wonder what was going on. I like that.
Yeah. But. Lots of stuff there.
People who wrote in just did a great job.
They outdid themselves.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw into the chat room. Chat room, we are so grateful that you joined us here tonight. And I know that some of you came, Ryan, I know you came in at the Eastern time. So 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that's not Central. And I guess we should try to be more clear about that. I thought we were, but for it and what's going on with it. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion.
Yeah,
but we're glad you came in. We got more people in now than we did the whole night, and that's great. So
hopefully we'll have some more.
Final thing for those who are still in the chat room.
Yeah, go ahead.
What did you read while we were on vacation from reading? What filled the void from Dune?
What filled the void from Dune?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Well, I started before the Dune series. I've been reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and I got up to book 5, and I think somewhere in there. And now I read through book 6 of that. And so it's kind of fun to go back and revisit the characters, just like it's fun to go back and visit the characters through Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's eyes as we were as I began Paula Dune. So.
Yeah. Very cool. What about you, Jim? What were you reading this month?
I read Red Shirts, and I am reading a novel from Michael Jan Friedman called, it's brand new, it hasn't even been released yet, it's called I Am the Salamander.
Oh.
And I'm hoping to do a Skype interview with him and send it off to Scott if he's interested in putting it on the diner.
I would love to have it sent to me, and we'll put it into the people. I didn't tell you this, Jim, but when you did your interview with Keith, it was one of the top. It was the number 5 show for the Chronic Rift Network for May.
Holy moly!
Yeah, so it was up there.
Awesome.
So.
Well, I've been reading Harry Potter and Gallows. I started the Harry Potter books forever ago, and I've just been struggling through them, not in a bad way, just because I love the movie so much I know what's going to happen. So I was trying to finish it, and that's what I've been doing with my time. I'm almost done. I have about another day or two, and then I'll start Paul of Dune. But next time we have a break, I'm reading this really interesting book. I saw a panel on it at Comic-Con a couple years ago called the Laws of Superheroes. And it's written by these lawyers who said, what would our laws look like if superheroes to change, and how would they apply to having them around? And I just thought it was the most interesting thing because I'm really interested in law. So
that sounds like I interviewed Simon R. Green for the Sci-Fi Diner. It's a podcast. The interview hasn't been released yet, but he's an English author. And he tackled his Deathstalker series is basically he tackles if you did something like Star Wars,
Yeah.
so the original trilogy, what would it take to finance the Rebel Alliance? And to look at it from an economic perspective. And so he goes through these books, and the Rebel Alliance is, calling in all these cars to help finance their initiative. And then when they finally overthrow the Emperor, then there's all this infighting because everyone wants their ships to be, wants their payout, right?
Mhm.
And so it follows through this a 5, 6, 7, 8 book series that he's written. So it sounds fascinating. I did not read the book, but I love the premise of it. It kind of sounds
That does sound really cool.
it sounds kind of like this idea of, well, we have laws. How would laws apply if we have superheroes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roland said he wanted to say the author name, Terry Goodkind. I'm assuming that's probably what he's reading, which is what they call
sword.
it?
Wasn't a
Sword of
and
Truth.
Sword of Truth series.
Yeah. Roland, just a side note, there's a great library sale that happens every year, and it just happened. I think it happens twice a year. It just happened, and I got the whole series for $6.
Oh,
So,
jealous!
I know, holla! So I have yet to read it, but it's on my list. So.
Oh man.
Okay, well, I guess that wraps it up. Jim, thanks for struggling through. I hope you feel better, man.
Oh, I'll be fine. Scott,
Yeah.
Raul messaged me a little while ago and asked if you would mind playing our promo on the diner.
Yeah, I would not. I'll be actually beginning to edit the main show, and I need to throw some promos in there. So I'll make sure that you guys will play a promo for the Babylon podcast in there. So
Yeah,
we actually did a normal show finally where we did like news, and we have a new trivia question again. We haven't done one of those in months. So
Mm-hmm. Okay, gentlemen, I think I'm going to take a powder here.
All right, man. Have a good night. Feel better.
Take care. Chat room again. Thanks for joining us. You did say, Ryan's asking, was there less conversation in the chat room this time? We had a few people pop in. We had they just popped. They kind of spread out. We had about 4 or 5 people in the chat room, but none of them really in together because of schedules. We had some guy from England. Who was it? I should know his name, but Darker45 was his handle in here. People don't use their real names in here, and I don't always know who it is. But
it's I think last time there was like 16 people, so it was just like
16.
I'm pretty sure I looked down at one point and there was 16.
No, see, I wasn't looking.
Yeah,
it was me. I had like 20 windows open. It was all me.
Yeah. So, but hopefully next time when it's a book, there'll be more.
Yeah.
Yep.
We know. So. People just didn't like David Lynch.
Yeah, that's there. We will see you later. Thanks so much.
Yep. We'll catch.